be too big of a deal. I'm really putting the Mac Pro or the Mac Studio to the test today. Multiple recordings and such. All right.
Well, see, that's your problem. Is that all that Apple shit?
This Apple stuff, because I try not to curse.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did your
professionally.
daughter hear me say that? Bad
No,
word?
God, not at
I'm
all.
sorry.
None of the olders are away. But no, actually, Patty Shetler just told me recently she didn't know that I cursed because I guess I said on a podcast like I curse like a sailor when I'm recording LinkedIn Learning and things don't go well. And she's like, I had no idea you cursed. And I'm like, my best kept secret in the WordPress space, I guess.
Hey, side question real quick. Do you make a lot of money from LinkedIn Learning?
I make, it's probably like a third of my income. But I also have like 14 courses. So like the royalties are pretty reliable at this point. And then every other month I generally get an advanced check. I'm probably going to cut back because it's been a lot of work. I've basically been doing like a course every 6 weeks, but at this point, with the courses I have in the library, yes, it's a reliable source of income for me.
So I might want to have a one-on-one with you about that later.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Let's get into the presentation. So, 3 keys to landing your first podcast sponsor even without downloads. The number of downloads I had when I sold my first podcast sponsorship was 0. I actually hadn't even launched my podcast yet. I was about to launch, and then an opportunity arose. So some people will probably say, like, okay, that's like one time, but I've now repeated this thrice. So for How I Built It, which was my first like real podcast, we'll talk about that in a minute, for WP Review, and for my Make Money Podcasting podcast, I pre-sold sponsorships to all 3 of those podcasts before they even launched. But with How I Built It specifically, again, people will say, did I get lucky? No, I didn't get lucky. I think as a freelancer, I learned how to ask for what I wanted and needed. I think this was a really hard lesson for me to learn because I just assumed if people wanted something, they would ask for it. If people wanted that extra thing for their website, they would ask. Or if people wanted to sponsor my podcast or whatever, they would ask. But I came to realize that generally you need to do the asking, at least at first, at least until you get big enough. People aren't always going to assume there's opportunities. It's probably a little bit different now because there's like the influencer economy, the creator economy. But certainly when I first started freelancing in high school, and then when I launched my podcast 7 or so years ago, that wasn't really a thing. So I knew that I had to make the ask. And so here's how it happened. I got an email about a link back. I don't actually know if link back is one word or not, but Grammarly accepted this as the spelling. Basically, somebody reached out to me and they said, hey, I see that you blog a lot about WordPress. I just released this WordPress guide. Do you want to link back to your website or to this page on your website? I responded that I don't do link backs, but I decided to kind of shoot my shot here. And I said, I'm launching a new podcast that is targeted at WordPress people, basically the same audience. If you want to pay me $99, I will link to your guide on the show notes page. I'll include a logo and I'll mention it in the show. And he basically said, sure, why not? Which I was absolutely floored about. I figured I was like glib. I was kind of being glib about it. But he was like, yeah. And that was kind of my first big lesson in sponsorship was, for the right price, people will pay for that backlink and for the forever link, I'll say, right? Because it's not, you're supposed to like, I think the relation attribute is supposed to be sponsor or no follow for paid placement. But the fact that it's linked there, yeah, generally people are willing to pay for that. So they said yes, and then I had my first episode sponsored. Then for my second episode, I talked to Rebecca Gill, and she mentioned LearnDash, and so I reached out to Justin Ferriman at her behest. And I said, hey, Rebecca Gill mentions LearnDash a lot in this episode. Do you want to sponsor it? And he just said yes. So I had a good combination, which is the 3 keys that I came up with, right? And that said, this would not have worked for my first podcast, which was the TIL podcast. I launched that with a bunch of friends in 2012. This is a close facsimile to the actual artwork that I made, and I was worse then than I am now at making stuff. So, and I can't find the original artwork because that show is like gone forever. But the TIL podcast was basically just me and a bunch of friends. Every Friday we would go to this bar and we would have a discussion about something. And I realized that I had large gaps in knowledge. And I said, hey, we should start a podcast where like 5 of us just get on a Skype call and talk about something. And it was not a good podcast because I'm a bad moderator. So I didn't really moderate. And we were kind of all over the map, right? So compare that with how I built it, which from the beginning had a pretty clear mission, which was to highlight successes and failures in starting a WordPress business, specifically a WordPress development business, essentially. TIL podcast was unfocused, so we didn't have any clear topics that we were going to talk about. We just kind of like, hey, what's in the news this week? Let's just talk about that. It was unpredictable, so we wouldn't really record on a schedule, and we didn't have a format, and it was poorly moderated, which was my fault because I was the moderator, and I'm really bad at that. And so we had this kind of rotating group of guests that was generally like me and 2 friends, and then sometimes our significant others, and sometimes not. We didn't do any research. We just kind of like picked a topic. Like we talked about Bitcoin before any of us really knew what Bitcoin was. So it was kind of the perfect storm of like I feel like what everybody says when they're like, I should start a podcast. It's just talking with your buddies, right? That's a bad podcast. So using that model, and thinking about what worked with how I built it that didn't work, and then subsequently WP Review and Make Money Podcasting versus TIL podcast or some of these other podcasts, right, that are just kind of like that. I came up with the 3 keys to getting your first sponsor, and spoiler alert, downloads isn't one of them because again, I didn't have any downloads when I got each of these shows sponsored. So maybe we should. Are there any questions in the chat? I don't want to blow the thing up. All right, cool. So the 3 keys to getting your first sponsor: you need a niche podcast, specifically a niche podcast that solves a problem. You need a good network and a good reputation inside that network, and then you need the right offer. So from here on out, I'll get a little bit deeper into each of these, and then I'll talk about why this was a key for how I built it and why it worked against me for TIL podcast. So first, a niche podcast or a niche podcast. Your podcast should have a clear niche audience. It should also help people solve a problem. This is how you get alignment with potential sponsors. Because again, if you're just like, well, I'm going to talk about stuff, like what stuff? What are you talking about? What audience are you serving? These are the things that potential brands, potential sponsors are going to want to know because they want to know if you are talking to the same people that they are trying to talk to. So, how this worked, why this worked for how I built it. In the beginning and now, right? It's changed over the years, but in the beginning, I had a clear audience. It was WordPress freelancers. And the problem I was trying to solve was how to start a WordPress-based business. And I did this by interviewing people who had successfully launched and run WordPress businesses for at least a couple of years. And I got the good, the bad, the ugly, what they did right, what they did wrong. And the show subsequently took off and did really well. And I had very clear alignment with my brands. And so the guy who was trying to target WordPress people, right? Perfect alignment with the podcast. LearnDash, trying to target WordPress people. Perfect alignment with the podcast. And then Pantheon sponsored the show for a long time. And now Nexus has been a long time sponsor of the show. So those are all people who are trying to support WordPress content and tap into a WordPress audience. Today, How I Built It helps creators leverage tech. And so I make that very clearly my mission. And I make it very clear that the problem I'm solving is making creators more efficient so that they can make money with their creator business. And so again, there's clear alignment there. I'm not telling founder stories anymore. A lot of podcasts do that. I am offering actionable takeaways. By the end of the episode, a person listening should know what they can do today to implement what we talked about. Conversely, TIL, why this failed for TIL. There was no clear audience. There were not even clear topics. We didn't really plan. We just kind of looked at headlines and we're like, let's talk about this today. So we talked about the Coin, which was the digital card, in one episode. In another episode, we talked about the Oscars. Those could not be two more different things. It was just kind of something we were interested in that week. And again, we weren't solving any problem. Nobody was asking, how does the Coin digital card work? Because nobody knew what it was except for early adopters like me. Nobody was asking really how the Oscars worked, or at least they weren't asking us how the Oscars worked because Hollywood insiders were talking about how the Oscars works. So it was basically just friends talking. We were trying to recreate this barroom conversation, but that maybe was fun for us. It definitely was fun for us. But if our goal was to get sponsored, then we weren't doing anybody any favors. The second key is a good network. So you need people who inherently trust your work if you're going to get sponsored before you have download numbers. You need a good network of people you have relationships with in your niche. That's really important. And you also need a good reputation so people trust you to deliver. So this could be sharing everything you know on Twitter or TikTok or whatever your social network of choice is. It could be building in public. It could be showing, building in public is a great way to establish a good reputation because you're showing progress that you're actually making. And then a good network is participating in events, talking to people, right? Again, it's been a little bit harder the last few years, but I just joined a really great community of creators, and I'm building a network of people in the creator space after I have successfully built one in the WordPress space. This network was the key to me getting sponsored early because people knew who I was, they trusted in my work, and early on, they wanted to support it, almost whether or not they would get a return on their investment. And so again, why this worked for How I Built It. I spent years in the WordPress space building in public, going to events, and writing tutorials for how to use WordPress. I went to, I wrote almost a weekly column for Envato and their WP Tuts website, which I then parlayed into a book. So people in WordPress trusted me. As I was developing that trust, again, I was speaking at WordCamps. I made myself visible in the community so that when I was looking to take on sponsors, Pantheon already knew who I was. And they were like, yeah, we'll support your work. It also helped that I kind of knew the space. I guess I'll talk about this more in the third key, but I kind of knew the space, and I knew that people in the WordPress space specifically were sponsoring WordCamps that didn't necessarily see a great ROI, and I could promise at least a longer-term sponsorship for cheaper. Why this failed for TIL podcast. Since we didn't have a clear audience, there was no single place to establish trust. Again, why should people trust me or my friends to talk about the Oscars? Like, what, besides, like, we also watch the Oscars, right? Or maybe we read the Wikipedia article on it. Anybody could do that. So we hadn't established trust. It was a classic bunch of people talking without direction. And so we didn't have a good network in any of these spaces. And we didn't have a good reputation in any of these spaces. If I had started a web development podcast then, or if my friend Cal and Tim, if they had started a sysadmin podcast then, or my friends Nick and Becca started like a Disney podcast then, these would have all been better moves if we wanted to get sponsored from the beginning. Because that's where each of us had an area of expertise, where we had a good reputation and a good network. So that is really important, right? I could start a podcast about cigars today or Disney or whatever, but I'm not connected to that world. And so if my goal is to get sponsors, instead of just like kind of making my hobby a jobby, that wouldn't be the right move for me. All right, and the third key is the right offer. I'm not going to, I mean, you can see my offers on how I built it/sponsor if you're wondering how I put my offers together, but knowing your niche and your network, you can craft an offer that works for them, right? If you're working with, nonprofit organizations and your sponsorship is very event-based, right? Then maybe you can craft a package where on top of sponsoring the event, we'll mention you on our podcast for the 4 episodes leading up to the event, and then maybe one after, right? So you can kind of craft it there. Or, if you work with, a bicycle shop, then you can craft an offer specifically around, maybe other events in the space or specific topics. And you can work out an offer that's good for them, right? Maybe a link and a logo is not going to be best for the bicycle shop. Maybe you want to promote the bicycle shop's podcast instead. Most brands are willing to pay for a forever link and a logo on a show notes page. That's true, depending on the price. But again, if you know your niche well, then you can craft a good offer for them. And so, again, why this worked for how I built it. I had clear goals from the beginning with this show, and I thought about sponsorship from the beginning. My website had built-in support for sponsors. And because I knew the niche well, like I said before, I knew that a lot of these bigger brands, especially hosting companies, were sponsoring WordCamps for tens of thousands of dollars. And so I could position my sponsorship that way and say, look, you're sponsoring one event, one time for $10,000. For $10,000, you can sponsor my podcast for a year and get a link on every single one of those episodes that's going to be there forever. You will be featured on the homepage every week that you sponsor the show. So now your logo is getting potentially more long-term visibility, and I am personally vouching for your brand. So that is how I was able to position my sponsorships in the WordPress space, right? In the creator space now, I'm positioning it as I want to make creators more efficient. I want to help them make money. I am a creator myself, so if there's a tool that I use and you want some cross promotion there, I can really talk about how it's helped make my business money, and I can craft an offer that way. Why this didn't work for TIL podcast? Well, you can probably guess at this point. We were just kind of having fun. We weren't thinking about making money, and honestly, it would have been a nightmare to try to figure out what profit sharing would be for. I was footing the bill for most of it. I was paying for the hosting, and I was doing the Skype and the recording and all that stuff. But my friends were taking the time out of their evenings mostly to come talk. So how would that look? Would they get paid per episode, right? We didn't think about any of that from the outset. So no offer would have been good because nothing else was clear. Even if I said like, hey, yeah, you'll get a forever link like somewhere in the show notes. Where would we put in that sponsor spot? How would we easily transition to it? Would I have to stop somebody from talking? There's a lot of things that I would have had to think about, or we would have had to think about beforehand in crafting the right offer. So again, those are the 3 keys: a niche podcast, a good network, the right offer. I can get into kind of my offer and talk about kind of cost per acquisition and stuff like that if you'd like. I haven't prepared that, but I think the offer is going to differ depending on your niche and your audience. So what's next? First, if you have a podcast, then refine your podcast's mission. If you don't have a podcast, you need the clear niche or problem to solve right from the beginning, right? Again, if you've already launched, it's not too late to do this. You probably just need to focus it a little bit more. Instead of talking about businesses, talk about WordPress businesses. Instead of talking about WordPress businesses, talk about WordPress plugin businesses. Instead of talking about WordPress plugin businesses, talk about indie WordPress plugin businesses who are making a name for themselves. Something like that. And then the problem you're solving is how a indie plugin business can make it in today's world where a lot of the major plugins are owned by hosting companies or giant companies like Awesomotive. From there, tap your network and build in public. Make a list of sponsors that you know personally or companies that you know personally who might be willing to sponsor your work. And then build your reputation further by building in public and talking about what you're working on and your craft and everything surrounding your podcast. And then craft an offer that works. Again, this may be different for everyone, but come up with something that you can deliver, right? For a while, I was promising like multiple mentions on social media, and I just wasn't delivering on that part. For a while, I was saying like, oh yeah, if you sponsor 5 episodes, I'll make a YouTube video for you. Again, that wasn't really something I was delivering on. It wasn't really worth it. Now, if somebody sponsors a half year, right, then I will make a YouTube video for them. And I guess that's the other bit. And let me move myself here. Oh, lots of mirroring there. Okay. So this was another thing, right? My offer in the beginning was kind of sold by season. So you could either buy 1 episode, which I got rid of. People can't just get 1 episode now because that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for me, but it doesn't make sense for the sponsor because you're not going to capture the whole audience if you're only sponsoring 1 episode, and like messages need to be repeated. I've heard like 6 to 8 times. So people could buy 1 episode, 4 episodes, half a season, or a whole season. And this is when I was recording from like January to July and then August to December. Now I'm basically recording straight through the year. It's still the same number of episodes, but where I take breaks, but a season is kind of a nebulous, unknown term, right, that I have to explain. So now I'm reworking my offer where you can get a quarter of a year, half a year, or a whole year. And that makes a lot more sense to everybody. And anchoring people to a quarter of a year, which is a lot better for me, allows them to kind of book a semi-long-term relationship. What won't be mentioned in my pitch deck is I'll still allow for a minimum of 4 episodes, but I'm really going to encourage the quarter of a year because then you can have. Then I think you'll kind of see some good results there. And so always refine your offer, but craft an offer that works for you at first. And then start reaching out to people. This is definitely the hard part, right? It's the ask. Draft an email, include your mission as you've refined it, include your offer as you've crafted it, and then talk about why they'd be a good fit. Hey, you solved this problem. I talk to people who are trying to have that problem solved. And then that is where you'll find alignment, because now you can talk to potential brands about reaching an audience that they're trying to reach. So that's everything. I definitely am going to open it up for questions, but those are the 3 keys to getting your first sponsor without any downloads. Thanks for watching. Follow me on Twitter if you're not already. And if you want to learn more and see like more long form writing on this stuff, you can head over to podcastliftoff.com. All right. So making my hobby a jobby. I can't take credit for that. I heard that on another podcast I listened to. This guy, Mike Hurley, has a bunch of podcasts, and he was asked if he would ever do like a watch podcast because he collects watches. And he's like, I don't want to make my hobby a jobby. So that's why I tried doing a podcast called Late to the Party, where I was doing like a West Wing. I didn't start West Wing until 2018. That was like the first time I ever watched it. So like a solid 12 years after it went off the air. Nope. 18 years after it went off the air, something like that. No, 12 years is right. Yeah, okay, 12 years is right. 2006 is when it went off the air. So a full preteen after it went off the air. And so I started a podcast called Late to the Party where I would watch it and then put it in the context of today. And like by the 5th episode, I'm like really into this. I don't want to work while I'm watching it for the first time. So like that kind of fell off, but it felt like it could have been a good series if I didn't care as much about the TV show. But I was like very emotionally invested, especially by the end of season 1. So, but are there any questions, or would you like me to elaborate on anything?
I certainly have a question that I'd be willing to run by you if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So the 3 keys are great. The niche and solve a problem. That working with a client, we've done that. And we've established a network. We have an audience. We do have some downloads, nothing to write home about, but consistent, and they're trending up every month. So kind of all the things that you want.
Thanks.
Really what we're at is trying to figure out a price. And I appreciate that it's how long's a piece of string and not quite, sell it for whatever you can get. But, we know what it costs to produce. We are going after prospects that have resources. So this is, you had mentioned earlier in your presentation, Joe, 10,000, and that's not a number that's outside of the range of folks that we would be talking to. So we're not going after small WordPress shops. We're going after companies that could budget for that, and probably already do in different avenues and mediums. And so trying to think about how to position it from a really one of the things we're looking to latch onto is we were talking about it in a different way, but it's the same thing. You talked about being trusted in the WordPress community. We have an established brand, and we are a nonprofit, or this client of mine is. So there's value for these potential sponsors to be associated with a known brand, a respected brand, and trying to think about how to price that in a way, especially since hearing what you were talking about is one-off sponsorships. We're not particularly interested in selling things one by one. We're really trying to gear it up for, can we position this for a year? Can we position it for half a year? Or can we just brand the whole thing? And it's your company show for the next 3 years.
Right.
Kind of thing, like you brand a stadium if you give enough money. And we're not talking about that kind of money, but that kind of thing.
Right.
Where FedEx, it's the FedEx field until FedEx starts paying it, and then it's UPS field or whoever.
Right. Yeah. It's the Staples Center until it becomes is it crypto.com center or whatever it is now?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But do you have any thoughts on trying to think about what kind of maybe the question is when you've been able to sell a sponsorship, particularly if a prospect comes back around what am I getting for it? What are the selling points that have worked for you or in defending your numbers kind of thing? And I don't want to get into, the specifics of what you're charging kind of thing, but how are you positioning that?
Yeah, totally. I mean,
why don't you want the specifics of what he's charging people? I do.
well, my numbers are public.
It's on his website.
Yeah, they're on my website.
Oh, okay.
So you can see them. I charge $329 for a mid-roll, which is well above so with a big enough podcast and with brands who are in this for a long time, right? They're going to pay between $15 and $25 CPM, cost per milli, which is cost per 1,000 downloads, right? So if I have 4,000 downloads per the first 30 days in an episode, and I'm charging 25 CPM, that's $100. Those are pretty accurate numbers. I get between 4,000 and 6,000 downloads per episode in the first 30 days, right? So let's say I max out at 6,000 downloads. That's $150. I'm charging over double that for a mid-roll. So what I've done, right, is I talk about cost per acquisition. This is better for smaller podcasts, right? Because you have, you have these giant podcasts, like Conan Needs a Friend, like Joe Rogan, right? I mean, he's the biggest podcast in whatever. Yeah, CPM makes perfect sense for them, right? Because you're reaching a broad audience who isn't necessarily engaged, and you're just really playing a numbers game, right? It's like Coca-Cola sponsoring the Super Bowl. But when you have a niche focused podcast, you are engaged in a specific community, right? So that's the first selling point there. We are trusted in our community. I am a trusted person in the WordPress space. But then I also do what's called, I calculate my overall reach. So yeah, I don't get, 5,000 downloads in the first 30 days is actually in the top 1.5% of podcasts. So I can't say like I'm the smallest, but I'm also not the biggest, right? And I'm certainly not what certain brands are looking for. But I say, okay, so I'm not the biggest podcast. I'm not getting millions of downloads a month, but I also have a newsletter that I write to weekly. I have 5,500 Twitter followers, right? That I'm happy to promote you to. I have an Instagram. I have YouTube. I have these other places where I have an audience. And so then I calculate my overall reach. All right, 5,000 downloads per month per episode. 5,000 Twitter followers, that is an audience of 10,000. 2,300 YouTube subscribers, right? Maybe I just plug you at the beginning of one of my YouTube videos. So that is, my YouTube videos actually get between like 100 and 2,000 views depending on what I'm talking about. So let's just split the difference here and say that's another 500. Now I have an audience of a 5-digit audience, right? That I can say, I'm not only doing this for you, but I'm vouching for you in all of these places where I've established trust. And then you have the good, better, best, right? I think Lemma talks about this, good, better, best. All right, well, for $100, you can get a pre-roll mention, right? But for $500 per episode, you'll get the exclusive mid-roll mention, and you'll get a mention on a YouTube video, right? Or I'll do a dedicated TikTok or whatever it is, right? Or for $1,000 an episode, now you're the presenting sponsor. Your logo is going to go on our artwork. It's going to be the Blah Blah podcast presented by you. We'll even have you on a couple of times throughout your sponsorship to talk about what you're doing for our community, right? Those sort of things where you can add value, where it could be high impact for the sponsor and not a ton of extra work for you or for your client. And in the nonprofit space, right, I suspect a lot of their work is looking for donors, right? So maybe you present to some of your best, look, I'm only doing this to our top donors, but we have this podcast. We're trying to add more value for our community and for our donors. For an extra percentage of what you're already donating, we can make you the presenting sponsor of this podcast as well. Cool.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, no problem. Are there any
I have a
other
question for
Yeah.
Liam. Do you have a podcast?
Actively, where we're publishing? No, not currently. I'm working with a client on a podcast and am ramping up a podcast that, interestingly enough, Joe and I launched a while ago, and we're considering how to retool that and get that going. But the specific one I'm talking about is for a client.
Gotcha.
Beth, are you?
People tell me all the time I should do a podcast, but I just don't have the bandwidth. I'm sorry.
I mean, if you're doing you do the weekly chats.
I know, but then I got to pay somebody to make the audio and figure out how to do the podcast thing. Will you just do it for me?
I mean, I can do that as a service. Yes.
Yeah, I know. I just need to hire you as a consultant to get me up and going. But again, too many other things are ahead of that. So it'll be sometime maybe.
Yeah.
Or I just might quit working. You know, I am 65.
Yeah. I mean, test the waters a little bit, right? You could always.
Project management is the most boring thing ever.
Not to project
People do not
managers.
wanna listen. Well, I guess that's true.
Right? That's a like a hyper niche, right? Like project managers are really into whatever tools you're looking at or trying, and right now, now I'm seeing if ConvertKit is good for me for my project management. Maybe ConvertKit wants to support me, or whoever, right? I'm looking at Groundhog, right? Because you're in the WordPress space. Maybe they'll want to support me or whatever.
Yeah, I'm actually even more super niche because I do WordPress project management.
So
you know, I mean, well, and you know why I did that? Because I know where I used to before COVID. I knew where those people were every single weekend.
yeah, right.
You know, they say find your audience. Oh, I didn't have to work. You know, I mean, because project management is project management. It applies to anything. There are a few nuances that are for web development, or a few nuances that are WordPress, but for the most part, it's the same stuff.
Right.
But most people see it as very boring.
Yep.
Getting stuff done isn't boring, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. People would find a lot of
what's not boring.
Getting things done on time.
Yes. So my topic for the Page Builder Summit is to wireframe or not to wireframe. That is the question.
There you go. Very nice.
Joe, can I ask another question about pricing?
Yeah, absolutely.
You talked about good, better, best, and you threw out a variety of different opportunities, and I'm wondering, how customized do you do that? And I don't mean like if someone comes to you and says, hey, look, we've got a fair amount of money, we'll do this, can we customize? Yeah, of course, what do you want? But like in terms of like your initial conversations is good, better, best, how a la carte are you making it? Because I could see potentially that might just get a little confusing. Who did I agree what to? And did I remember to schedule this tweet and that tweet and things like that? And how do you go back and deliver? Do you ever deliver a report back to them? Like, yes, they can see the logo. Yes, they're going to hear the episode. Yes, they're going to hear their name. But do you then send them links to the 5 tweets that they got and link to the YouTube episode where they're mentioned?
Yeah,
how do you manage that?
That's a really good question. Yeah, it's it's funny because something I'm thinking about doing for the membership is building out a better sponsor CRM, because it is just kind of like Post-it notes right now, like not real Post-it notes, but
Shame on you.
I know. I mean, I have like Todoist, right? Like, but generally it's not so a la carte that I get in the weeds with that stuff, right? So usually I can look at Airtable, I can see, Text Expander is sponsoring half of a year. I know that for half of a year they also get a video. And when I make that video, yes, I be sure to send it to them. And so it's not so customized right now. When I am negotiating, especially over email, usually I take that email and I send it to Todoist and I put it in the CRM section of Todoist. and then I can break that out into deliverables. But yeah, usually there's not much to deliver. I don't even, because I'm not doing CPM, I'm not selling based on CPM. I don't even send downloads unless they ask for it. If they ask for it, I'll happily send it. Sure. But I don't really have a system in place to do that right now. ExpressVPN wanted that, so like I had a recurring reminder to do that, and I had like a canned email, because they were very keen on CPM and like wanted me to guarantee downloads. That was the first and only time I did that, because if I didn't come within like 10%, I had to do a make good episode. And then they also expected, they constantly expected live reads. So like they would always say, they would want me to send the episode, right? So I would do that when it went live. And then they'd be like, you read the wrong one. And I'm like, no, I'm like, we talk about this every time. I read the last one I have when I record the spot. And so I'm like, we've talked about this a lot. And so eventually, I think they also had like a net 30 after launch pay. Like, I didn't like anything about it, and I just wanted to use ExpressVPN's logo because they sponsored a lot of podcasts. So I think they paid me for 1 of 4 episodes. And then after, I was like, you know what? Like, never mind. I'm not going to do a make good, but you don't have to pay me for the rest of these. You've paid me for 1. I've mentioned you. I'm going to use your logo in my pitch deck for sure, but totally not worth it. So now, like, they helped me craft some of my red flags, right, about some of that stuff. That, and I don't know if you saw me tweet about it recently, but, like, know your red flags. There is this one, like, energy drink brand that has a ton of them. Like, don't announce that this is a sponsorship. Don't put background. We want this to sound conversational. And I'm like, nah. Like, first of all, pretty sure, I think it's the FCC states that you have to make commercials or sponsorships obvious. I guess I should verify that. I just assume, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. But they want essentially...
I'm pretty sure it's the case, too.
Yeah. But they want
it's just like disclosing
right,
when there's an affiliate link,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, is that required? I'm not sure, but it's certainly good.
Affiliate disclosures are, in fact, required. I did look that up because I wasn't doing them for a while. I was like, oh, this is probably like a tall tale. And then I like looked it up, and yes, affiliate disclosures are required and are supposed to be required, like very close. So whenever I'm like breaking the law, essentially, whenever I tweet an affiliate link and don't say it, technically.
But you've only got so many characters. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
If they want you to do that, they need to give you more characters.
So, I could say like hashtag AFF, I think is what a lot of people will do.
I see.
Yeah. And in any case, they essentially wanted like audio product placement. So like I'd be talking to somebody and be like, oh yeah, I'm just like drinking my Magic that's the actual name. I'm actually drinking brand name's drink, right? And I was like, nah, this is non-negotiable for me. Like you are asking for a lot of things, including like exclusivity from like all other drinks, which you have to pay extra for. Like you have to buy all the spots in that episode if you want that. But that's negotiable, right? Like if someone wants exclusivity, and Liam and I, we talked about this recently, right? Like LearnDash is currently sponsoring the podcast, and Automatic approached me about potentially having Sensei sponsor the podcast. And they both want year-long deals. And I'm like, really feels like I'm leaving money on the table for not the best reason here, because they do serve different audiences. And so I approached LearnDash and I said, and here's the other thing, right? Stellar WP is actually sponsoring the podcast, right? So they could change it from LearnDash to another brand at any time. And I said, hey, Sensei Automatic also has a lot of brands, wants to sponsor the podcast as well. I'm giving you first right of refusal to buy up those extra spots. And they said no. So I went to Automatic and I said, hey, good news. Because Stellar WP could be running different brands. It might not always be LearnDash. I'm happy to offer you these spots starting at this date. But just know that LearnDash could also be run in the same episode as you. And they're like, as we record this, they're talking about it internally, and they're seeing how they feel about that. But it's...
What is Sensei? Is that their LMS?
It's WooCommerce's LMS, which predates most other LMSs in the WordPress space.
Yes, but if it's coming from WooCommerce, it's probably crap. Have you used it?
I used it in 2016 when it was crap, but starting in like I think 2018 or 2019, they put a lot of effort into it, and it looks really slick now. Because that's the other thing, right? If it was Sensei as I used it, I'd be like, I really can't vouch for this. But one big difference that I would highlight, right? And this is the thing that you need to think about, right? For sponsorship. If I were crafting two similar products in the same reads for both of them, I would have to highlight different things. Hey, if you're looking for a standalone option that is affordable, that also allows for memberships, LearnDash is for you. Hey, if you want to test the waters of an LMS and you love WooCommerce, like if you are already selling with WooCommerce, Sensei is for you. That's how you do that. That's how I would do that, right? And again, it's interesting because in the podcast space, I feel like this is weird taboo, but like, it's not like only one hosting company sponsors WordCamps. It's not like only one car company sponsors a TV show, right? You have the Yankees Radio Network presented by Jeep, and then they run a Toyota commercial, right? So that's where you want that good, better, best. Hey, if you want exclusivity, we can totally do that. It's going to cost you $35,000 for the year. That buys up all of the available inventory for the next 52 weeks. If you don't want that, know that I'm not guaranteeing no competition running in the same ad. I used to, and I adhered to that really well, but it's been... I personally feel
but
like...
now you're super popular.
I was trying to think of a nice way to put it. But yes, I've been turning away a lot of sponsors because I'm like, well, I can't because I'm already doing this one. And like, if my main goal right now, if my main support, it's like if WordCamp US, right, they're charging like $50,000 or $60,000 or whatever. If Pantheon or who, I guess not, Pantheon's a bad example.
GoDaddy Pro.
Yeah, if GoDaddy Pro is like, we don't want you to run any other hosting companies, right? WordCamp US.
They don't want main WP there. Or they right. Because GoDaddy Pro is that sort of thing.
Right.
It's not really hosting.
Yeah. Right. Then I'm certain the WordCamp Foundation would be like, well, here's the price. We have a set number of $60,000 spots. You'd have to buy all of them. But like, I'm certain they're not going to turn away Automatic, who kind of competes with GoDaddy Pro, right? Or WordPress VIP or whatever. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm guessing we'll see this evolution in the podcast space, especially with dynamic ad insertion, which is a little bit less predictable. Well, it could be as predictable as you want, but if I'm just saying, yeah, I'm selling inventory for this type of product, you could potentially see competitors running in the same episode. And I think that's okay. I mean, we'll see. Maybe I'll see a bunch of backlash and it won't be okay, but I'm willing to test that theory.
Okay, so here's my question. If podcast sponsorships represents a third of your income, where does the other 2/3 come from?
Beth is like asking for my books.
No. I'm asking because I'm trying to see.
Yeah.
If that's all you wanted to do,
you want to know as a creator, where's my money coming from?
Let me explain.
Yeah.
I'm 65 years old.
Yeah.
I don't want to do a lot of work.
Right.
But
Right.
I need some, but I didn't put enough money in my retirement account when I was working in corporate and they were matching it because I was a single parent and I felt like it was more important to buy my kid a car. So, because that let me out of prison as well. But so I need some evergreen streams of income. Okay, so I've got my academy. I've got some affiliate stuff. It's not a lot, but a little bit. If I decide to go down this road, maybe there's ways I can shift things so I'm working less, but the money's still coming in. So I'm asking you. I know you do similar stuff to me. Are you serving agency clients anymore?
I'm busting your chops a little bit, but I totally understand because I'm doing that same shift, right? When my daughter was born, I decided I wanted to stop trading time for dollars, essentially, right? So, LinkedIn Learning, I trade a lot of time for dollars in the beginning, right? So, but then there's the royalties, right? I've written like 5 books and I've never seen a single royalty check from any of them, right? Maybe the HTML and CSS one will change that because it's a broader topic than normal, but I don't count on royalties from that. So how else am I?
A book, they say a book is really just a
Yeah.
fancy calling card. It's
That's
not really.
it's a fancy business card, right? That's exactly what it is. Now, I mean, my books are textbooks, right? Like HTML and CSS, a visual quick start guide, is something that presumably could be used in the classroom. Right. And that's probably the way that people like authors like me make money, right? But yeah, you're right. It's so little misfire there because I'm not trying to be an authority in the HTML and CSS space anymore. So LinkedIn Learning, podcast sponsorships. The way that I'm trying to make money from these brand deals, right? I can either increase my sponsorship per episode. One of the reasons, right, I'm relaxing my no competition in episodes rule because I am trying to make that my primary income. And then I can also launch more shows, right? So I have WP Review. Honestly, between you, me, and anybody who buys this in the future, I'm thinking about winding that one down because I'm trying to move more out of the WordPress space. And that one doesn't fit in my kind of content offering. It is sponsored, and I've gotten more requests for that, right? So maybe I position WP Review as what does WordPress mean for creators, right? That's the way I could do it. But I'm not going to.
Why are you moving out of the WordPress space? I mean, you're not the only one. There's a lot of people doing that were primarily like, so for example, agency trailblazer, Lee Jackson in the UK. He was totally WordPress. Now he's really more outside of that.
Yeah. I personally, I think that there's a finite amount of money that you can make in the WordPress space. I think, frankly, I think most WordPress people are cheap. Yeah. And honestly, the reason I was making a bunch of money in the WordPress space is it's kind of going to page builders now. I mean, it's because the size of project that I was taking on when I was freelancing, building custom themes from PSDs or whatever. If I still worked at an agency, I wouldn't be worried about that because we'd be doing big custom builds, right? But that's not the type of work I'm doing anymore. So I'm really passionate about helping podcasters. Honestly, we're at the very beginning, right? I saw somebody tweet, if the creator economy was a clock, we'd be at the 1 o'clock hour right now, right? Like that, like really? 1 a.m. Yeah. We're just getting started here. And podcasting is the same way. People are realizing that if they do it the right way, they can make money podcasting. I want to be there right in the beginning for that. So when people are like, how do I...
You said creator community. What do you mean?
Creator economy.
The creator economy. Exactly. You mean people who make money from creating content?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So my priorities are shifting a little bit. And I really want to focus and niche down in the podcasting space. But to kind of finish answering your question, right? Sponsorships. So more shows allow me to do more, to make more money that way. brand deals for my YouTube channel have been picking up a bit. So people want to pay me to do sponsored reviews on my YouTube channel. I'm working with Riverside right now. They are interested but hesitant because my podcast channel is very small and they're worried that they won't see a return on their investment. And that's all negotiation, right? And then the other part of it is I do some client work still, videos for hire. I'm trying to do a lot less of that because it's just like I would rather just get. I'm charging like $10,000 or so to do about $1,000 a video to do videos where the people are very hands-on. I'd rather get paid $25,000 to develop a course where nobody is hands-on, right? Where they're just high.
I get that totally.
Yeah, right.
I get that totally.
So I'm trying to go up market there as well. But then I'm going to put all of my extra time and effort into all of my main time and effort, all of my extra time and effort go into LinkedIn Learning. All of my main time and effort into getting sponsors, and then Podcast Liftoff, which is going to be cohort-based courses and a community to start. Kind of like the Jennifer Bourne model, I think. And so that will be, I think, the scalable part of my business. But I'm doing a bunch of groundwork right now, authority building right now. That's why I'm trying to focus up and get out of the WordPress space and get out of trying to do like YouTube stuff and get out of the site builder space. I want people to look at me and know Joe helps podcasters.
Right.
Does that answer your question? Affiliate.
Yes, and by the way,
Yeah.
that's what I already thought.
Yeah.
Joe helps podcasters.
Well, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad, right? That's what.
Well as Joe is an excellent teacher and has a lot of courses.
Well, thank you.
Because
Yeah.
that's my jam. So
Yeah.
of course I hone in on people who do that. Is it hard to get onto LinkedIn Learning? There's an approval process, right?
Yeah. So I want to be cognizant of the time of this workshop and keeping it.
Oh, sorry.
Keeping it there. Beth, grab a time on my calendar or send me a message and we can talk about that. Yes, there's an approval process. But thank you for attending this. It was good seeing you both. Thank you to anybody who's watching the replay. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message on Twitter at jcasabona or respond to the email where you got this replay. And I will happily answer anything. But thanks so much for watching. And until next time, get out there and build something.
Thanks, Joe. Bye for now.
Recording stopped.
Thanks, everybody.